And please begin.
Okay, well, I will begin. I'm sorry for that little delay, but I had to get this message out immediately. And we can all just make a mental prayer for Prema Bhakti Devi Dasi, who just left her body 2 hours ago. And I just got the news. So we can dedicate this session to her and her future progress in Krishna consciousness. So I'll begin just chanting for a few minutes and then begin with the verse 1, 2, 14. Divinity and devotional service. One of my favorite chapters in the Bhagavatam. Also one of the chapters besides the 10th canto with the most commentaries from our acharyas. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Gaja Janaranjana Shodanandana Gaja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo, 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 Gora Haribo. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupada Paramahanta Parivraj Kacharya Ashto Tarasata Shishimat Abhaya Charanaravinda Bhagavatam Swami. Join the Tilita Pravishnom Vishnupada Ashto Tarasata Shishimat Shira Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Thakur Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Shad Goswami Ki Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Mathura Dham Ki Navadip Dham Ki Mayapur Dham Ki Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Gangamai Ki Jamunamai Ki Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Samavita Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Juga Dharma Harinam Sankirtan Ki Prihat Vidanga Ki Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Todas las glorias a los devotos reunidos, todas las glorias a los devotos reunidos, todas las glorias a los devotos reunidos, todas las glorias a Shiguru Shigurang. Hare Krishna. It's a pleasure to again have the privilege and honor to address the Vaishnavas who are present today on this. Okay, so we'll begin by reading the verse, and then. Okay. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam 1-14. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tasmad ekena manasa Bhagavan Satpatam Pati Shotabhya Kirtatavyascha Jaya Pujascha Nityada. I'm just going to quickly read the word for word. Oh, everybody can read it here. So anyway, we'll go through it and everyone can repeat with their microphones off because the words are important in this verse and actually all of these verses. Tasmat, therefore, ekena, by one, manasa, attention of the mind, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Sattvatam, of the devotees, Pati, protector. Shrotabhya is to be heard. Kirtanabhya, kirtitabhya, to be glorified. Cha, and. Jaya, to be remembered. Puja, to be worshipped. Cha, and. Nityada, constantly. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Therefore, with one pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotees. Purport. If the realization of the absolute truth is the ultimate aim of life, it must be carried out by all means. And any one of the above-mentioned castes and orders of life, the four processes, namely glorifying, hearing, remembering, and worshiping, are general occupations. Without these principles of life, no one can exist. Activities, Om Jnana Timirandasya Ganam Jana Shalakaya, Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha, Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale, Swayam Rupakadakaham Darati Shwa Parantikam. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale, Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyarishatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Garadha Shivashari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So this is a very wonderful verse. And so we'll read the purport now. One interference here. Finished the purport, I wanted to comment, but on this part. So here Srila Prabhupada says, and any one of the above mentioned castes and orders of life. So he's referring to the previous text, and very beautiful verse, which we already covered. Varnashrama vibhagashaha. In any division, any of these four orders, samsiddhir haritoshanam, it was already established. Swa anushtitasya, one's own prescribed duties. But Jiva Goswami, he comments that swa anushtitasya or swa anushtita actually means that which is most suited for one. And therefore, if we want to generalize, because Srila Prabhupada uses the word general here, not general like, ordinary, but meaning the main purpose of our existence, that is devotional service. And it's for all castes, as he says here, are general occupations for all castes and orders of life. These four things. And of course, the first three, glorifying, hearing, and remembering, Shravanam, Kirtanam, and Smaranam, these three basic processes, which our acharyas, Srila Prabhupada, and all of our acharyas say are these three, and especially the first two, Shravanam, Kirtanam, give rise to the other processes of devotional service. Otherwise, even though Parikshit Maharaj, he was simply hearing, but he was also glorifying. He was glorifying. If you read through the Bhagavatam, the first few verses of every chapter, sometimes up to 10, 15 verses, are Parikshit Maharaj glorifying devotional service, actually saying such wonderful things about Krishna. And so it's not that hearing was his main process. That's the way he perfected himself. But you can't hear, if you hear and you don't glorify, then it means that your hearing wasn't very good. And if you glorify without hearing, we will see in the rest of the purport what the result is. And remembering and hearing and chanting creates remembrance, and then worshiping. Otherwise, worshiping or sevanam is an essential process. It's an essential process because everything, of course, all these processes are essential in one sense, but worshiping is what everyone does. Krishna is being glorified in the spiritual world. Everyone's hearing about Krishna, but they're all worshiping Krishna. All of this is worship, and worship indicates bhakti. So all of the different activities of bhakti, although sevanam is mentioned as one process, it's also all-inclusive. So I wanted to mention that. And then another thing, without these principles of life, no one can exist. We will come back to that point. I just wanted to mention those things. Of course, Prabhupada begins by saying, if realization of the absolute is the ultimate aim of life, of course it is. If it is, it must be carried out by all means. Otherwise, he's giving meaning to this verse. Because if it's not the ultimate aim of life, then it would be departmental. And this brings us to a very similar verse from Bhagavad Gita, which many of us know. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana. Ekeha. Here it says ekena, that tasmat ekena. Polotan, therefore. Now, therefore, meaning, therefore, if the highest perfection of life is to please the Lord, therefore, ekeha manasa, one should do it. If this is the actual purpose of life, one should do it ekena, fully concentrated. Why? And Srila Prabhupada mentioned this. Well, I'll get to it. Well, actually, he mentioned it in the verse that Bhagavan Sattvatam Pati means Krishna is the protector. One of our basic fears is that our whole life is based on this body when we're in condition, and therefore we're full of fear and anxiety. So I'm going to mention one pastime a little later once we finish the purport. And therefore, even in the case of great saintly persons, there's some fear. We want to preserve this body. Why? Because one of the characteristics of our eternal nature is sat, eternality. And when we're in the bodily concept of life, the eternality aspect is not, it's not fully developed. We don't feel our eternality. We feel the constant, as Prabhupada says in his introduction to Bhagavad Gita, constantly being threatened by non-existence. And so here Prabhupada says, but actually, even if you're within the body and even you're within alive, no one, in this way, no one can exist. No. And what does that mean, that no one can exist? It means that, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, yam hina vyattatante purusham purushar shapa Samaduka Sukam Diram Somritatbaya Kalpate. He says that one who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is Amritatvaya, is eligible for liberation. That's what we want. We want Amrita. We want, and therefore, Krishna says, Na satto vidite bhava, na bhavo vidite sataha. Ubayor apidishton das tvanayors apidarshina, tattvadarshina. That this has been established of the non-existent. There is never any permanence, and of the non-permanent, there's no existence. So therefore, when Srila Prabhupada, he says here that no one can exist, meaning that no one can continue. Existing means eternality, and therefore no one can do it. So this is a very important point. Without these principles, you can't exist. And another point is that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that people who don't have devotional service are like the dead walking, like zombies. So we're living in a society of zombies, and they're very mystical zombies because they appear to be full of life and full of all kinds of things, but they really don't exist. If you put our life, if you draw a timeline just of this one cycle of yugas, it wouldn't even be you couldn't even see the point, which is our lifetime. You couldn't see it, even with a microscope. You couldn't see, if someone made a point that was our lifetime of 70, 80, 90, 100 years, you wouldn't be able to even find that little tiny dot. And so, Prabhupada continues. Activities of the living being involve engagements in these 4 different principles of life. So what a wonderful expression. Srila Prabhupada says these are principles of life. This is not just, some religious process or some, esoteric spirituality. This is actually life. This is existence. Without bhakti, without devotional service, there is no existence. And then, especially in modern society, all activities are more or less dependent. All activities are more or less dependent on hearing and glorifying. Any man from any social status becomes a well-known man in human society within a very short time if he is simply glorified truly or falsely in the daily newspapers. Now, in a previous verse, in this particular chapter, very famous verse, Munaya Sarupishto Ham Bhavadbir Lokamangalam Yat Krita Krishna Samprashno Yayatma Suprasidati. So, and Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, in his purport, very beautiful purport, he says, everyone is glorifying. The birds are glorifying, the merchants in the marketplace are glorifying one another. Forbes magazine, Fortune 500, who's the greatest, the most wealthy, the most famous. You go on an airplane and they pick out personalities and they sound very wonderful. Even the worst people, mafia people, killers, Al Capone, all these, they're famous, but they're infamous. They're infamous. Their fame. Kamsa was also very famous. He was famous, but famous for what? Atrocities, a cruelty. Stalin, Hitler, they're also very famous. But what are they famous for? Atrocities, disasters. So in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, I was trying to find that verse. I never memorized it, and I should memorize it. There's a verse that says, that one should not criticize and one should not glorify, but of the two, better to glorify. So this is the this is the status nowadays, that we're glorifying. Everyone's being glorified. And what does the Bhagavatam say? No, and in the Bhagavatam, in the second. The second canto, it says, yes, this glorification will always take place. Swavid barahostra karai samstuta purusha bashu. Yes, swa, the dogs, the hogs, baraustra, and the camels, and the karai, the asses. They're also, they glorify a bigger animal, the alpha male, the most powerful, the one who defeats the others. So because they will, when who participates in this glorification process? Those who do not worship the Supreme Personality of God. So we must glorify. The point is that we must glorify someone. So Srila Prabhupada continues. Sometimes political leaders of a particular party are also advertised by newspaper propaganda, and by such such a method of glorification, an insignificant man becomes an important man within no time. But such propaganda by false glorification of an unqualified person cannot bring about any good, either for a particular man or for society. There may be some temporary reactions to such propaganda, but there are no permanent effects. Such are the activities, therefore such activities are a waste of time. The actual object of glorification is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has created everything and manifested everything before us. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate. Krishna is the origin of everything material and spiritual. We have broadly discussed this fact in our comments on the Janmad Asya, Bhagavatam 111 shloka, at the beginning of the Bhagavatam. The tendency to glorify others or to hear others must be turned to the real object of glorification, the Supreme Being, and that will bring happiness. So, there's a story, a laundry washerman, he had a mule. He had a mule, donkey. The donkey's name was, he named the donkey for some reason, Sabhagya. And of course, Sabhagya means all-knowing. So he had this donkey for many years. He was very attached to his donkey. Like anyone, you have a pet. What to speak of a pet that serves you every day, like people who have cows or bulls in a compassionate, loving society. People, their dogs, their cats, they become very attached. So he became so attached to his donkey. And then one day his donkey died. So some of the people in the marketplace that would normally buy things from him, when he would bring it on his donkey, he was walking through the marketplace crying. And people knew him. They said, so what's wrong? Oh, you don't know. Sabhagya has left this world. He's died. And everybody looked at each other. Oh, Sabhagya, that's horrible. No? And so then the people in the marketplace, they were talking to, more wealthy merchants. I said, did you hear? What? Sabhagya has left this world. Oh, that's horrible. And then the minister was touring the different shops and said, my dear minister, what's going to happen? What do you mean? Are they going to declare, because Sabhagya has left his body? Oh, that's horrible. Everybody, sometimes people will say, they'll say hello to you and you say, do you remember me? Oh, of course, yes. And we don't have the slightest idea who it is. But and then the minister immediately went to the king and said, my lord, you wouldn't believe it. What? Sarvagya has left this world. Oh, the king, that's horrible. I think we should declare a day of mourning, a special day in remembrance of him. And then the queen said, who is Sarvagya? And the king said, minister, tell her. Oh, just one moment, I just have to get all the details. He went back to the market. Please tell me, who is Sarvagya? Well, we have to go to the sellers in the marketplace and find out who is Sarvagya, who is Sarvagya. And finally, somebody asked the washerman, who is Sarvagya? He's my donkey. No. So even a donkey can be glorified and come to the level of everybody knowing, even the king, even the whole kingdom. And so this is very common, and it's very good. We have the tendency to glorify, but we don't always know who to glorify. Just like Patiparam Pradamrita Svadanam, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says this in his Shikshastika, that at every step, someone in the process of devotional service is getting more and more taste, acquiring more taste. But also we can apply that particular part of the Shikshastika to everyone, because everyone at every step is looking for Krishna. And if we don't have Krishna, because our natural tendency is to glorify Krishna, the tendency, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem Sadhu Kabinoy, the nature of devotion is there within the living entity. The Krishna Prem, the aspiration for Krishna Prem is there within every living entity. The three qualities of eternality, knowledge, and bliss are there within every living entity. And therefore we will search them out. We will glorify. But who we will glorify? Just like if we're all looking for Krishna. If we don't know Krishna, who will we look for? My family, my friends, my society, my country, soldiers and military people all over the world in all different societies have given up their bodies, thousands of people, for their country. And even people give up their bodies to protect a politician, or even to protect a mafia man or whoever's paying them. Someone pays a bodyguard, and the bodyguard is willing to die for this, this person. So what to speak? Everyone is looking for Krishna, but when they can't find Krishna, they find a substitute. So also in the process of glorification, we try to find a substitute. But Srila Prabhupada says this tendency is there in society, but it doesn't mean that everyone that's being glorified is glorifiable. I don't know if that word exists, but anyway, we all understand what it means. So we don't know, everyone's being glorified. Every child will think my mother, my father are the most wonderful people in the world. Of course, nowadays, Kali Yuga, that doesn't always happen. But at least when we're young, if our parents are nice to us, just like in India, many of you are from India, you know that people take a picture of their mother, especially the mother, sometimes the father also, and they paint a little halo all around the picture. There's some great saintly person. I always mention this, but even that nicely painted picture of the mother with an aura, an effulgence. When I take another body, I have no idea who she is, and even if she were standing in front of me, I might feel some, deja vu, but I won't know who it is. I won't know who that person is. I won't have any idea. So the Bhagavatam says, that the Bhagavad Gita says that Vyavasayatmika buddhir, those who are devotees of the Lord, eke hakurunandana, they give one pointed, undivided attention to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But those who are not devotees, bahushakya hyanantascha, bahushakya means that many branched. I always speak about this point. People departmentalize their lives, and they have the spiritual department. Oh yeah, that's when I go to the temple. That's when I chant. But then I have my economic department. Then I turn off the devotion and I go into the economy. Then I have my recreational department. I turn off everything except for the TV or the, whatever. And then I have my, sports department, my part of our recreation, so we divide up our activities. But devotional service means that everything is included. Everything is included under the banner of devotional service. Everything must be done. Therefore, a devotee is, and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he comments on this particular verse, much chitta madgatta prana, that much chitta, my consciousness, my devotee's consciousness is absorbed in me, madgatta prana. I am their very lives, their very soul, bodhyanta paraspara. Therefore, they're always trying to hear about me, katyantaschamam nityam. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, these activities, these particular activities are the three, reflects the three basic processes which are mentioned here. Katyantaschamam nityam is kirtan. Bodhyanta parasparam is shravanam. And machchita madgata prana is smaranam. So this particular verse, this is what a devotee does. A devotee always, consciousness is focused on Krishna. Krishna is their life and soul. Krishna is everything to a devotee. And they want to glorify and they want to hear about Krishna. Nityukta upasate. And by this process, they are eternally and eternally engaged in Krishna consciousness. So Bahu Shakya, he ananta. There are unlimited ways. Otherwise, Maya, Maya can also engage us in unlimited different varieties of trying to serve the external energy. Just as many varieties of devotional service. So Maya is the Chaya Eva, as Brahma Samhita says. She is the shadow. So in the shadow, you will get all the characteristics of the original form, but in another dimension. So everything that's there, every tendency that is there in the living entity will be reflected in another dimension, through the process of Krishna consciousness. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in explaining this, this Eke Hakurunandana or Tasmat Eke Namanasa, he says something very beautiful, which I would like to read. He said, this is the commentary. Srila Prabhupada refers to this commentary. Prabhupada refers to this commentary in his commentary on that verse, and he also mentions it in other places that Vishwanath Chakravarti commented on verse 241 of Bhagavad Gita. So his comment is, of all kinds of intelligence, the best intelligence is focused on bhakti yoga. So the first aspect of focusing the mind is you understand, as this verse is stating, that bhakti yoga is, and this has been since verse number 6 up to now, this has been the focus. It must be bhakti yoga. Then in bhakti yoga, one's intelligence becomes single-pointed or fixed in determination. One thinks, now here we get the object of that focus and how that focus can take place, and why Srila Prabhupada said that this particular verse and Vishwanath's commentary made him understand the real purpose of life. The instructions of my spiritual master to worship the personality of Godhead by chanting, remembering, serving his feet, worshiping, and so on, are my only sadhana, my only sadhya. Now, for those that may not be so familiar with those terms, sadhana, of course, we've heard that, it means practice, and sadhya means goal. So during the practice and also in the goal, it is my only livelihood. It is the only thing I do. The only thing I do is to serve the will of Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga. It's the only thing I do. My only livelihood. I am incapable of giving up these instructions, either in the stage of practice or either in sadhana or in sadhya. I cannot give it up in even, it's not that this is a process which will end in my perfection. No, it will always be there. They alone, otherwise they alone, these processes of devotional service given by the spiritual master, are the object of my desire and my only responsibility. Now, this is very strong. My only responsibility. Otherwise, and that's what Sarvadhamam Parityajamam Ekam Sharanam Vraja means. The only thing I have to do is serve Krishna. Then my intelligence I use to figure out how to put everything under that umbrella of Krishna consciousness. That is the purpose of intelligence. Once one surrenders to Krishna, and the real purpose of all intelligence is, as Krishna says, "Dadami buddhi yogam tam eniyamupiyantite," is to attain Krishna consciousness, is to attain the shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No. Besides them, I can desire no other responsibility. Otherwise, giving up all dharmas means all dharmas are under one dharma, which is Sanatana Dharma, which is Krishna consciousness. I cannot desire any other responsibility, even in my dreams. A devotee is so determined. Of course, we may not have reached that stage. Sometimes our dreams may reflect other types of desires, but we should understand I'm really coming to Krishna consciousness even when I'm dreaming, I can only think of Krishna. It is all the same to me, whether I feel happy or unhappy. So this is such a developed stage of, it doesn't matter how I feel, happy or unhappy. Otherwise, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, dukeshvanudvignamana sukeshu vigatas priyaha. In happiness or distress, I'm not overcome by unhappiness, nor am I elated by material happiness. But vita raga bhaya krodha. But the real purpose of life is achieved when I can overcome this attachment, the fear or anxiety, and anger, greed, all these things. That's when I was spoke. It doesn't matter if I feel happy or unhappy, or whether my material existence is eradicated or not. So such an elevated platform of Krishna consciousness. So to illustrate this stage of Krishna consciousness, we can, I think, I particularly thought of the pastime of Ambarish Maharaj. How Ambarish Maharaj was totally focused. And Srila, of course, this is reflected in some verses which glorify him. And Srila Prabhupada repeats it. It's there in Bhagavad Gita purports. It's in the 9th canto, 4th chapter. Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayor. That my mind is totally focused. My mind is totally focused in Krishna. And so, and how is it focused? That Vachamshi Vaikunta Gunana Varnane, everything that comes out of my mouth is glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Karo Harer Mandira Man Marjana Shu. That also my hands are engaged in worshiping and in cleaning the temple. Shutim Chaka Chuta Satkatutaye. That my oral ability is only capturing Satkata Udaye. It's only awakened by Chakra Achuta, by hearing about Achuta, the infallible Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, we all think we're Achuta, we all think we're infallible. And then he goes on, and he says, you know, my feet, my legs are meant just to go to the temple. My eyes are meant to take darshan of the Lord, especially in his deity form. My nose is supposed to capture the fragrance of the flowers offered to Krishna, and also my taste buds should try to discern the wonderful flavor of Tulasi Devi, which is there in every offering. That flavor is there in every offering. You know, that flavor means this is offered to Krishna. And my sense of touch is embracing the Vaishnavas. And so my head becomes useful when I put it down to the ground. Actually, when Manigriva and Nalakuvara were praying to the Lord, it's said in the Puranas, it's not there in the Bhagavatam, but in some comments of some acharyas and also in other Puranas, it says that at one point in their prayers, they said that previously, my head was held very high and my chest was out. And then, but then they said, now we realize better chest in and head down instead of chest out and head up. Unless you're, of course, a soldier, then you might have to put your head up. But this is the best position, they said. The position of surrender, the position of prayer, the position of serving the Supreme Personality of God. So this is what we want. This is what Lord Chaitanya said, that we have to develop this faith. And what does faith mean? Shraddha sabde, vishvasya kahe, nischida, sudrida nishchoy, Krishna bhakti, koila sarva karma krita hoy. That faith means that an unflinching and unbreakable faith that by serving Krishna, everything else will be accomplished. Now, of course, that doesn't mean we take it fanatically and we think that by serving Krishna, I don't have to perform my other responsibilities, like taking care of children or, maintaining this body. All these things must be done. They must be done, but it must be done in the proper way. Now, Lord Chaitanya, so Ambarish Maharaj, he perfectly did these things. He was so Krishna conscious that all of his ministers, the main qualification for a minister, just like Krishna says, the qualification of Arjuna, Bhaktosi me sakachati, you are my devotee and my friend. So the main qualification for all of these ministers that worked under, they had to be devotees. That was their main qualification. And then they had to be qualified Brahmins. But first of all, they had to be devotees. And then it stated that Ambarish Maharaj turned over all the responsibilities of the kingdom and even the responsibility of doing yagyas for the benefit of everyone in society, doing Vishnu yagyas, obviously. That responsibility was given to the ministers so that Ambarish Maharaj could worship his deity, so that Ambarish Maharaj could fast on Ekadashi and could observe all kinds of special events and spiritual activities, internal activity. He was such a great devotee, a devotee naturally, just like Ramananda Roy. Ramananda Roy was so advanced that Krishna made the arrangement that, Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made the arrangement. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu requested him, I want you to come to Jagannath Puri. Please request a transfer. And so he went to Prataparudra and he said, please, can I have a transfer? He said, why do you want it? Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked, in that case, not only will you will be transferred, but you will receive full salary, and your only duty in life is to serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I many times have said, if we could only have employers like that, full salary and you serve Mahaprabhu, that would be such a wonderful thing. Hopefully our society will come to that point someday where, you're a devotee of Krishna, full salary, the government, just take care of this person. He's glorifying Krishna. So such a wonderful thing that Ambarish Maharaj accomplished. And he was challenged. And he was challenged by, just speaking a little bit about that the devotees, as it says in this verse, that devotees are, they're protected by the Lord, Bhagavan Sattvatam Pati. He is the Lord of the devotees. So the Lord of the devotees means protector. Otherwise, sometimes we see there are lords in the material world. There are lords that don't really protect us. They lord over us, but they don't protect us. They exploit us. But Krishna protects us. And he, of course, one time Prabhupada did say that I am also exploiting, I'm exploiting you for Krishna. But Krishna doesn't exploit us. Krishna wants to bring us to the point where we can exploit him. We're trying to exploit him in the wrong way now. But, just like in Goloka Vrindavan, everyone is demanding something from Krishna, in the way that Krishna wants. Otherwise, Krishna, his friends, Krishna, you should learn how to fight better. They're demanding, Krishna, you should, eat more, become stronger. Sridham would always say that. Krishna, you have to do more exercises. You have to, because you can't defeat me. At least once in a while, you should be able to defeat me. And, we know Krishna's mother and father, they tell Krishna what to do. And the gopis, they insult Krishna. They call Krishna Lampata, a degraded debauchee. And so, and that's what Krishna wants. He wants to bring us to that point. So Lord Chaitanya, he illustrated what's being said in this particular verse. He illustrated it, what it means to be Ekena Manasa in a conversation that he had. This is given in the second chapter of Madhya Lila, very beautiful set of verses where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he sits together with Ramananda Roy and Swarup Damodar, and he says, now I have to reveal my mind. I have to tell you that I have no love for Krishna. Everything you've seen up to now has just been an act or performance. Because if I had love for Krishna, I wouldn't be breathing. The fact that I am breathing and trying to maintain this body within the material world means that I have no love for Krishna. If I had love for Krishna, I would have given up this world a long time ago. But, and he said, just like a white sheet, even though it may seem that I'm doing, may seem to be that I'm doing wonderful things, which is like a white sheet, if there's one black spot, it ruins the whole thing. But this is a big black spot. I have no love for Krishna. No, I'm just like my consciousness is just like that of an insect. So this is Lord Chaitanya's extreme Mahabhava Prema, which is being manifested in such a special way that Krishna is, he's showing, Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is showing his associates how a devotee thinks. How does a devotee think? A devotee thinks that just like, let's see, what is that verse in? Trying to think of that verse. The verse kind of escape my mind right now. Anyway, it's a verse by Prabhupada Saraswati Thakur, and I'm just kind of Kaivalyam Narakayate. A devotee thinks, this is Kaivalyam Narakayate, that that liberation in this world, meaning, of course, a devotee doesn't even aspire for the 4 types of authorized liberation for a Vaishnava, having the same form of Krishna, living on the same planet of Krishna, etc. Even those a devotee doesn't aspire for, but a devotee will not reject them. But a devotee totally rejects Kaivalya, the monistic. It said it's just like hell. To a devotee, it's like hell. People, practically speaking, the whole world is aspiring for this Kaivalya, for this understanding of the Supreme without any qualities, without any characteristics, because even within Christianity, Islam, they have a conception of God, but God without a lifestyle. Or I remember that, when I was young, they would always portray the spiritual world as being like a place where, like 1955 USA, where you have, everything's very nice, for there's a lot of prosperity. And, we used to get milk delivered to our door with nice cream in a glass bottle. And that was the perception. So, and then another thing, then the next thing is Sridasha Purakasha Pushpayate, that all the promises of heavenly life, Swarga Loka, etc., are just like Pushpayate, like a sandcastle that will be washed away by the waves of the ocean. And all of these desires will be washed away, just like there was one devotee who was promoted by his pious activities. The servants of Indra came to take him to the heavenly planets, and he said, "I have one question." I can't remember his name now. I have one question. How this is eternal? Otherwise, the benefits you're speaking about, are they eternal? Almost eternal. It's almost eternal. I mean, it's so long. Yes, but that means they have a beginning and an end. Yes. I'm sorry, I don't want that. You're crazy. They basically said, you're crazy. We're offering you something that no one can attain in this world. And he said, no, thank you. And then a little later on, another chariot came, but this time it was from Vaikuntha. And he gladly got into that chariot, and went back home, back to God. So, Durdan Tendriya Kalasarpa Palati Prokata Dhamstrayate, that all sensual activities for a devotee are just like the teeth of a serpent, a cobra who has his teeth knocked out and no poison. Then, nobody's afraid of this. Like they used to have in the Red Fort in Delhi, they used to have all these snake charmers. And I went there one time and I saw one of them. He was taking a break. His snake was in the pot. I said, "Don't you fear that they will bite you?" And he said, "Oh, there's no problem. They have no venom." No. And so the example is given. Vishvapunam Sukhayate. A devotee feels that that everything is perfect within the universe. There's only happiness. There's only supreme happiness. No, that's all they can see. And Vidi Mahendradis Sakitayate, that I see the position of Brahma and Indra and all these positions just like the position of a worm. I consider that any promotion to any position within this material world is just like being promoted to a worm status, an insect status. No. And why is that? How does this happen? Yat karunya takatakshavaye bhavatam tam goram evastuma. This happens when one receives the sidelong glance, not even the direct glance, but the sidelong glance of the Supreme Personality of God. So this is a devotee. A devotee is anyabilashita shunyam, jnana karman, free from all desire of jnana, karma, and anything else. This is what ekeham manasa means. In many places in Bhagavad Gita, it says, Mayarpita mano buddhir, that I want to worship the Lord with all my mind and my intelligence, otherwise with all my faculties, with my senses, everything I want to offer to Krishna. Sarvapadi vinir muktam tat paratvain nirmalam. It says that one should try to understand the purpose of life is to give up all these upadis, all these designations of material existence, and understand Rishikesha Rishikena Sevanam Bhaktir Uchate, that this is called devotional service. This is what Sevanam Bhaktir Uttama. This is the highest activity that there is. So anyway, this is what it means. That if we're tasmat, if we're actually focused on the Supreme Personality of God, then we understand He's our protector, and He says that in Bhagavad Gita. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishami ma shuchaha. I will protect you in any situation, and therefore these activities should be done. You glorify Krishna, you worship Krishna, you meditate on Krishna, and you worship Krishna. Nityada. And of course, this last word, and I'll conclude with this, Nityada, constantly. It's mentioned here in Srila Prabhupada's word for word, constantly. Not, everyone, we can find a lot more candidates. They sometimes glorify God. They sometimes hear about God, whatever the small details they may have, or even devotees. Sometimes they hear about Krishna, but it's not nityada. It's not constant. It has to be constant. This is, one of my favorite verses in Bhagavad Gita is 8:14, because in 8:14 in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Ananya Chitta Satatam, that one should one's consciousness, one's mind should never, always, we should be ananyacheta, the mind fully focused, always satatam. Then yo mam shmarati nitya saha. Then one should always remember, me. Krishna is saying, one should always remember me, nitya. So he says satatam nitya saha. And then tasyaham sulabha parta. Then I will, one can easily achieve me, nitya yuktasa yoginaha. Nitya, then again, nitya, you will always be joined with me in the process of devotional service. So 3 times, nitya, constantly, regularly, this is what devotional service means. We have to come to that point where there's no distraction. There's nothing else to do. And this is what's being emphasized in this particular verse. And I myself had the experience that when Krishna, as the protector of devotees, I was drafted into the army, and I was put into a miserable condition. It was miserable for me, and of having to be surrounded by all these people who have nothing to do, because I was already was introduced to Krishna consciousness. I didn't take it up fully at that time, but I understood that we weren't this body, that we, and so it was such a miserable condition. But then when I started practicing Krishna consciousness fully, as soon as I did, within 2 weeks, the captain of the military base called me, and I thought, oh, he's going to chastise me because everybody's angry with me. I get up too early. I chant Maha Mantra and they're all disturbed. He's going to chant. And he said, you don't belong here. I said, well, I agree. And he said, therefore, I'm going to give you separate housing, separate rations. You'll get paid for, you can go rent someplace and live your spiritual life. And then you just come and like work, just come. And then Krishna was so merciful that the chaplains that I was working with, they told me, you don't have to come every day. Just come, when we need you, we'll give you a call. So I would come like 2-3 times a week for a few hours. And the rest of the time, I could just distribute books and do so many things. So I saw how if we just try to surrender and we accept the obstacles that may come, as Srila Prabhupada says here in his purport, because there's nothing else. If we really understand that, and we pass a few tests that Krishna may send our way, or there may be many tests depending on our destiny, then we will get his favor, and he will make things easy, materially easier for us, if we really have that fervent desire to serve him without, as it says here, constantly, without any deviation, exclusively. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktya tvananyaya shakya aham evam vidor juna gyattum drashtum chatatvena pravishtum cha parantapa. That Krishna says, only by undivided devotional service, this is the only way, Arjuna, you can understand me, and then you can see me, and then you can understand the mysteries of my very existence. Raja Vidya Raja Guyam. So this is the price. The price is that we just focus on Krishna, and Krishna will supply everything else. So on that note, I'll stop here and see if there's any questions, comments. There is one question here already there. So I'll start with that one. It says, how is it possible to know if Sri Krishna is satisfied with my service? Well, I'll just take that part. There's more. How can we know that? Because the spiritual master is pleased. Because we're feeling more taste for chanting. We want to chant more. We want to chant better. We want to serve Krishna more. We're enthused to do these things. Utsahan. Therefore, Rupa Goswami said utsaha, or enthusiasm is the most important thing. And then how is it possible to stay always in sattva gun? We don't want to stay in sattva gun. We want to stay in vishuddha sattva. We want to stay sattva gun, as Krishna himself says, Brahma bhuta prasanatmana shochati nakamshati samasarvashu bhuteshu mad bhaktir labate param. That if you feel extreme happiness from the mode of goodness, extreme happiness, satisfaction, if you're free from lamentation and hankering, if you see all living entities as one, that's the real mode of goodness, then you can be promoted to the platform of bhakti. So of course, if we're bombarded by the modes of nature, how do we stay in the mode of goodness? We associate with people in the mode of goodness. And we take guidance, just like Arjuna. He was in the mode of passion. He's a kshatriya. So what did he do? He took instruction from Krishna and was situated in not only in goodness, but in transcendental. Goodness would have been very difficult. No, you can't just be in goodness and fight a battle. No, you have to be in the mode of passion. But he was in transcendental passion. And so we want to be in transcendental goodness, which means cultivating our Krishna consciousness, chanting our rounds very nicely with attention, carefully following the four regulative principles, etc. And what should one do if one finds himself under strong influence of other gunas? Well, what should one do? As Krishna says to Arjuna in the end of the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, you pull the mind back. You pull the mind toward goodness. And goodness means seeing everything in one category. So practicing devotional service means that we're inclined. If you're really practicing nicely, you must be situated in the mode of goodness, because you will see everything under the banner of Krishna consciousness. So here's another. Please explain how to surrender. Well, that I would just recommend read Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, how to surrender? But the surrender process is there. The surrender process, I'm just trying to remember which verse in the 15th chapter is that surrender process. I believe it's 15:5. Yeah. Nirmana moha jitta sangha dosha ajatmanitya vinivritta kama dvandva vimukta sukha dukkha samgaya gachantya mudha param abhyayam tat. Those who are free from false prestige, illusion, false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are free from all dualities of happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender. Now, how does that surrender come about? It's in the previous verse. I'm sorry. It's in the next verse. That surrender is the supreme. Then Krishna says, "My abode is not illuminated by sun or moon. Those who reach it never return to this material world." So the process of surrender is all those things. They know how to surrender, because free from illusion, false prestige. The actual surrender is mentioned in the previous verse, where it says, "Tam eva chadyam purusham prapadye." They surrender to the Supreme Personality of God. So anyways, that's what surrender means. So here is from Radha Raman. Thank you for the backstory of your time in the army. It's given me, okay, that's not a question. Just I hope that helps. I'm glad that story helped someone. It certainly helped me at the time. So any other questions or comments?
Ours, it sounds like having one pointed attention is easier for someone in the renounced order of life. Is it really practical for someone that's in the material world in a householder situation?
Okay, here's Kishori Priya, Devi. See your hand up. Yes.
I think Sarvabhauma Prabhu was asking you a question.
No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavad Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada. In Bhagavad Gita 10:10, Krishna says, Tesham Satute Yuktanam Bhajatam Priti Purvakam. So I was listening to Srila Prabhupada, and he was emphasizing on, the person who can actually think of Krishna constantly, as in this verse, Nityada, as you had emphasized. That can only happen when we have love for Krishna, or when we have love for anyone, then we think of that person constantly. So it seems like that's a prerequisite in order to be able to do this Nityada. Would you please comment on that?
Yes, as Krishna says, that that, as you say, Tesham Satatipranam Bhajatam. You don't just only have love, but you have love which is expressed through bhajata, which is expressed through worship. Otherwise, and we see that also practically even on the material platform. If we love someone, if we really love someone, we worship them. Just like someone loves their child, they're bathing the child, just like we bathe the deity every day, they're bathing their child, they're feeding their child, they're worshiping the child. And the children worship their parents. My mother is so wonderful, my father is so wonderful. When the love is, of course, then that all becomes contaminated by material conceptions and material qualities. But in the innocence of youth, young people, they see their parents as like demigods. And then after they start growing up and they hear, well, my mother did this, my father did this, and may see them taking a little drink or smoking a cigarette or, doing something that's not so transcendental. Then they get demoted from demigods to nice people. And then if they're not even so nice, then the children just want to move away, get out of there. So the same with Krishna. We have to see Krishna always. We can't doubt Krishna in any way. And therefore it says, Satata Yuktanam. You have to be always joined with Krishna in this loving devotion. You always have to be situated in that mood, that particular activity of glorifying Krishna. And then, of course, it also says that the Dhammi Buddhi, then Krishna, the symptom is, we can understand if what Krishna will give us, the ability, the intelligence and the ability to worship him and to come to him. So it's a pretty, and of course, that reflects a previous verse, that Satatam Kirtayantamam. If one is a Mahatma, if one wants to really understand the real nature, the Mahatma nature of the soul, we're all Mahatmas. We just have that quality covered up. Then Satatam Kirtayantamam. Yatantascha Dridhavataha. Then these things will happen. One will always be interested in glorifying Krishna. Nothing else, just like Srila Prabhupada emphasizes in this purport. And not only one will be interested in glorifying Krishna, but one will work for Krishna with great endeavor. We'll make great endeavors. And we see that in Srila Prabhupada and so many devotees, but especially Srila Prabhupada. He he gave his life, he gave up. Now, most of us are like a little concerned with our health, and Prabhupada just kind of left all those things to aside. And so it just means that to be absorbed. And of course, Krishna in the 8th chapter, going back one more chapter, that he says that that one should always be practicing Krishna consciousness. Abhyasa yoga yuktanam. So one should always be engaged in this practice of Krishna consciousness. Chetasa, nanyagamina, and one's consciousness should never deviate from Krishna. So that's what it means. Just be, and to do that, what do we have to do? We have to hear about Krishna, so that, just like it says here, any ordinary person, if they're glorified in newspapers, they become famous. Even Donald Trump, so he's practically a Shudra mentality, and he became the most famous man in the world. Even being a Shudra, just by manipulation of glorification. Of course, he was very infamous in many people's eyes, but so anybody, and so how much easier it is if some, Shudra can become so glorified, how much easier it is to glorify Krishna. But that will only happen if we hear about Krishna and we glorify him. We glorify him in the way that the acharyas tell us, which is, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chanting the holy name. So chanting the holy name, hearing about Krishna, this establishes this, and serving him, then our senses and our mind and our intelligence are all focused on Krishna. The Sarva, my volume, I was trying to turn my volume up when you were asking your question. Could you do that again? My volume was a little low.
My question wasn't so good.
Well, that's okay.
I just wanted to appreciate your wonderful class. And before I forgot, I wanted to thank Sri Rupa Manjari, who has COVID, but she's done the back technical part of this programs.
Hmm.
So
Is it Omicron?
I think so.
Omicron. I mean, I've read quite a bit about it, and it's more like a severe cold than the other forms of COVID. So it's everyone I know about 20 people I've talked to who had it. The problem is it's super contagious, but it's not so severe in most people's case. I mean, of course, if you have some other severe condition, it can be more severe. But for a normal person, it will probably be like a 4 or 5 day cold, flu or something like that, or maybe 1 week, depending on your level of health and immunity. So I'm sorry to hear that, and I hope it recovers very quickly. Actually, I was just reading the other day where it says that sickness, old age, and death are arranged by Krishna for his devotees so they can come back to him. Not like other people. Other people, it's their karma. But in the case of a devotee who's actually trying to serve Krishna with their heart and soul, they will also get old age, disease, and death, but it will only be for their edification and for finally coming to Krishna's lotus feet. So we shouldn't, even Prabhupada was not disturbed by disease. He was not disturbed by it at all. Anyone else? Here's another question. How to get strong desire to serve Sri Krishna always? I would say the same thing, associate with devotees. And here, the more we hear, especially from Bhagavad Gita, of our duty to serve, the more that's why Bhagavad Gita is so important. And until we really put into practice the principles of Bhagavad Gita, we should focus more on the Gita than the Bhagavatam. Then once you really get, you really feel like you're practicing the major suggestions in the Bhagavad Gita, then you can focus more on Bhagavatam. Gita is so important. Prabhupada, if you analyze all of his lectures, he gave more lectures on Bhagavad Gita than any other scripture. Many more, many, many more. Even in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Of course, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there are so many sources, and because it's emphasizing the Bhagavatam, there's a little more Bhagavatam, but so much Bhagavad Gita is there. Such an important scripture. Oh, here's another question. As a child, when we are born, our heart is filled with so much with love, but as we grow older, why does it fade away? I don't know that it fades away. No, I don't know that children also that the love they have is so pure. It's simply because their false ego has not manifested fully. No. And therefore, because they're totally dependent, then they feel the love, but the dependence, they're totally dependent on their mother. Once the false ego manifests, the first thing that manifests is false ego, and then intelligence, and then mind, and then the senses. They all become stronger as the body becomes manifest, the consciousness begins to focus. Because a child can't even go to the bathroom by themselves. They're totally dependent. So the love is established by dependence. Therefore, Krishna wants to be dependent on his devotee, because that dependence is the strongest expression of love. When one is fully dependent, and when someone depends on us, then it brings out the greatest quality of love. If we're normal people. Of course, nowadays, sometimes there's so many nasty people that someone's depending on them and they exploit them. But if we really have, so a child the child has that quality to show us that it's there. It's simply, we have to redirect our dependence on Krishna. We have to become totally just totally helpless before Krishna, thinking that without Krishna's instructions, without chanting Krishna's holy name, I have, like Prabhupada says here, I have no existence. I don't exist without these things. And that's how we can make that love, which is natural for us, become prominent. There's another question. Chakrapani, please go ahead. You have to,
Hare Krishna, Guru.
Hare Krishna.
I wanted to ask a question about determination and focus.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes we practice Krishna consciousness, the sadhana strictly, and we follow so enthusiastic. But after a time, which you start to went down again and again, and after sometimes we get back, and sometimes that happen so many times. And I was thinking, for example, I don't know if that, for example, in my previous life, that I could not get through in this life. I don't know if that influence or have that kind of influence on myself, or I have to do more, I have to be more determined, or I don't know. So what is your suggestion?
Focus. That's what is being emphasized here. That focus comes from from understanding that everything is solved by Krishna. Everything is happening by Krishna. So if we don't, so how do people become focused? Let's take a person who wants to earn money. That money becomes the most important thing in their life. And therefore they go after it. Or someone who's totally dedicated to their family. When they see that the most important thing in my life is my family, my greatest desire, you cultivate that consciousness, then you become focused. So the more we say that becoming Krishna conscious, distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, serving the deity, cooking for Krishna, all these things are the most important things. And as Srila Prabhupada had emphasized that without this glorification of Krishna, without serving Krishna very nicely, we don't even exist. Otherwise, the soul, the consciousness is not really manifest in the proper way. It's temporary consciousness. So anyway, that's how we can do that.
Thank you, Lord.
Anyway, it's getting a little late now, so I think we should stop. Unfortunately, I have to go back and focus on receiving some instructions for this disciple that just left her body. So I think we'll stop here. Thank you all so much for your kind attention, and we'll see when the next session can happen by whenever the devotees are ready to invite me again. I'm at your service. Thank you very much. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Shri Guru, Shri Gauranga, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Jai Gaur.
Haribo.
Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Prasad Swami ki jai.
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 Krishna.
Swami ki jai. Bol.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev.
Krishna. Hare Krishna.